And welcome on in to the latest edition of the Blue Horseshoe Podcast. He is George Bremer. I am Ryan Hickey. I guess we should get into form, George, this week, because this week's a little different. So maybe I'll start the pod differently by saying, Guten Tag. It's Germany week, baby. Let's go, George. You got your German down?
9. That's it.
Yeah, I got
That's
nothing
about
else.
as far as I go.
I got nothing else.
Dankeschön. We all know that. Thanks to Ferris Bueller.
I'll be honest, I'm not as I've seen Ferris Bueller, but a while ago. Can you translate for me?
Thank you.
Okay. We got 3 words. That's pretty good.
We're ready. I mean, basically could operate over there. Although I'm told my wife's family's been over there a few times. They had a German exchange student when she was in high school. They speak a lot of English over there. So I think we could probably get by.
Wow. Okay. Good to know. We like that.
England, I always thought that was the upside when I went to England, because you were in a foreign country, so you got to see someplace you'd never been, but all the signs, I could read all the signs. I knew, I could get around.
You don't feel completely lost.
They had incredibly narrow streets. That's one thing I really remember.
Yes, I went to Ireland.
Really narrow.
Europe loves these tight streets. I don't know if people drive over there. It's insane. I'm sure probably Frankfurt's the same.
Did you?
I did not.
We didn't drive at all.
My dad drove, and they, I'm sure England, same thing with the steering wheel on the right side of the car. That's trippy. And driving on the other side of the street, that takes some getting. There's a few times we're driving like we were in America, and you get to get the honk of just oh, wait, we're the wrong lane.
I can't get any other. I was not nearly brave enough for that. We took public transportation the whole time. But I had enough trouble just crossing the street because I would forget that, oh, no, this is the lane that, is coming this way.
You're looking the wrong way.
Uh-huh.
Well, you've survived to tell the tale. Hopefully, that's, what? This week in Germany, that should really be the education. Make sure you're looking which way to cross. I doubt anyone on the Colts is driving, so I don't think we've got to worry about that. But if you're going out and exploring the town, make sure just to know the other way. If you're looking left, you think oncoming traffic, make sure you just look right, just in case. We can't have any accidents, George, as we get so close to the bye here. Before this big Germany game here in week number 10. Also, before we get to Germany, we are basically at the unofficial halfway point of the season. Week 17 makes it a little annoying because there's no obviously perfect halfway season. I guess technically the halfway point of the season was at halftime against Carolina. And so we're not going to do an emergency pod at halftime of the Carolina game to give you our midseason grades. So we're going to do it 53% of the season done here, give you some midseason grades on the team, as well as give some MVPs. So let me ask you, let's start with this, George. Midseason grade. Overall, the overall Colts grade for this season, halfway through the year, what would you give this team so far?
Man, that's a tough one. Because, what's our grading criteria? Are we grading on just straight up, this is the NFL, results matter, and so, forget everything else, here's where you're at? Or are we grading on the curve? Because you're dealing with so much as far as, rotating quarterbacks, rotating tackles, rotating defensive players. To me, if we're just going straight up, then I'd say a C, because you're not in playoff contention yet, and you're on the fringe. You're right there. We can talk about that here in a little bit too, of how close you are to a playoff spot, but you're not there. And ultimately in the NFL, that's, did you make the playoffs? I think is always sort of the bar. So I would say C, but if we're grading on the curve, I'd probably go with a B plus, just because I don't know, with the first year head coach who got 4 games out of his rookie quarterback, and hasn't had the right and left tackle together since I think week 1. That's kind of something you would have thought was going to be disastrous at the beginning of the year. Lost one of your top 5 defenders at least for 4 more games that Grover's out at this point. All the problems that you had at corner with the injuries and the suspensions and all the things that have happened there. To be 4-5, I think is pretty impressive effort. So on a curve, I'm going to say B plus, straight up C.
I'm going to go on the curve because, again, we came into the season talking about what? Wins and losses don't matter. And I think you do have to take into account the injuries, where this team is in terms of trying to break in a rookie quarterback, new head coach as well. The talent is not they didn't come into the season saying, oh, we're going to compete with the Chiefs. So I would say the curve is absolutely the fair way to grade. I would go honestly A-. They've had some negatives, but if you really look at it, you've had your rookie quarterback start and finish one game. That's it. You started and finished one game. You had you didn't have your best player in offense, your running back, for the first 4 games. And then even when he came, Jonathan Taylor's been back in his form for, let's say, the last 3. So you really missed him for the first 6.5 games. He was still either not on the field or working his way back. You brought in Zach Moss, who broke his forearm and has been able to, like I said, kind of hold the ground while JT wasn't there. Your offense line's been banged up, but still performing at a high level. Defensively, you want to see them play a lot better. Like, that's been, I would say, one of the biggest disappointments so far. But with that said, you have injuries in the secondary. You are now missing one of your best defensive players in Grover Stewart for 6 games, a big loss. But I think overall, when you look at what the Colts coming into the season, what they were, the adversity they've had to face and overcome a lot of it, I've been very impressed. And you're sitting here 4-5, you already matched the win total from last year. I think there's, honestly, there's been some negatives, but this has been so far, I think, an overwhelmingly positive season where you've seen, again, you want to see more, but you saw some good flashes and you have reason for hope going to 2024 with Anthony Richardson coming back. Josh Downs has been a really fun receiver to watch and has developed nicely in this offense. Defensively, it's not been a lot, but you want to see more from Juju Brents, but I don't think he's come in there and playing, I would argue, the hardest position, maybe the second hardest position as a rookie to play a corner, has been solid for, again, the limited time he's been out there. I would say overall A-, I think is fair to say, with this team being 4-5, being competitive, and let's say 8 out of the 9 games they've played against some good teams and some playoff teams. Shane Steichen's impressed too. I think when you look at everything and take everything into account, I would honestly say, George, A-. This has been a very positive season, and B+ for you. That's still, again, a good grade, where I think halfway through, there's a lot of reason for optimism with not only how this team played so far up to this point, but looking forward, what you can project.
Yeah, I don't think our grades would have been quite this good last year.
No, jeez.
I don't think it would have been passing grades that we'd be handing out right now. But, talking about the cornerback spot, there's a chance. There's still a lot of projection going on here with Juju in particular, because he's just not been able to be out there that much. But Jalen Jones has been playing really well over there as well. I mean, there's a chance that Ballard drafted 2 starting corners in this offseason. And we've been hammering him, and rightfully so, for the lack of depth at that position, and them getting to the point that they were, and maybe relying too much on young guys. But I think some of that, to put it into context, goes back to what you were talking about earlier. The expectations for this year were not high. They were not Super Bowl. They weren't even playoff. They were, let's find out. Let's see if we got some dudes. That was the expectations coming into this year. And so the idea that you're going to let some young corners play wasn't terrible, but it also was going to always lead to something like you saw against Cleveland and New Orleans. That was a very likely outcome for that plan. That being said, if the cost of that is that you go into next year with 2 second-year cornerbacks that you feel really good about as the starters, and guys like Dallas Flowers still in that mix, and theoretically Kenny Moore's been re-signed since he's the defensive player of the week. Not officially, but he will be tomorrow. All of that probably worth the cost in the long haul.
Absolutely. I'm just trying to bring this up because Zach Hicks had a tremendous stat specifically about Jalen Jones. I think just kind of highlights what you're talking about, in the sense that he's gotten tested, but even in the tests he's had so far, he's passed them, almost with flying colors. Here it is. So credit to Zach Hicks. Shout out to him for this stat. Jalen Jones this season has been targeted 20 times. He's allowed 10 receptions for 86 yards in 184 coverage sacks. There are 2 corners with over 150 coverage snaps and allowed fewer than 100 yards this season. Jalen Jones is one, Marlon Humphrey is the other. So it's you look at early on in the small sample size, like I said, there is a real reason to believe that a day 2 and a day 3 corner pick this past year in the draft could absolutely be these 2 starting corners for the Colts in the next 5-10 years, which is massive in terms of this team developing. And like you said, I think too, this year was all about not only managing expectations, but having it's almost basically a year-long tryout of who's going to be on this team going forward, who can help us win and who can't. And I think a lot of the young guys that you were kind of throwing out there, kind of, in the deep end saying sink or swim, I think a lot of them, for the most part, are swimming. And that's I think a huge thing for this team in terms of going forward here. They are, again, it's not been perfect. It's not been pretty. We've had some frustrating post-game pods, and we've gotten on the defense and the offense for some mistakes as well. But this has been an overall season where I think you can, again, with the expectations where they were, the schedule that they faced, you could feel pretty positive so far about this season being 4-5 with a lot of the youth, how they're playing and how they're stepping up. And even too, like the offensive line is not young, right? I mean, outside of Blake Freeland stepping in, like this has been a pretty experienced offensive line that really, again, is one of the most expensive because you're paying them to kind of get back on track. And after 2022, and you had hope, right? We had hope that they would kind of turn it around, but so far they are paying it forward here. Even with some injuries, are still playing at a high level and starting to revert back to that 2021 form. So even like not only getting like young players stepping up, you're also getting units with a lot of veteran leadership here that had bad 2022 seasons having bounced back years. And again, that's another reason to have hope for the future.
And I think the offensive line, I think the view of them would be even better if Anthony Richardson was able to continue playing. When he's out there, I think the rushing numbers are even better and the sack numbers are lower. I think if he had been able to play all 9 games, I think you'd be talking about this line of being the 2021 line, the 2020 line, like being back at that level. There are things going on right now that they need to get better at, like everybody does. But there's some things going against them too. We talked about on the post-game pod, some of the way defenses are playing them, making their job just a little bit harder. But you see little moments like Quentin Nelson getting out there on Jonathan Taylor's touchdown reception and clearing the way. There's still moments, definitely. And again, the starting 5, the offensive line that they have projected, I believe only played together in week 1. So, that is saying something. The fact you've had somebody out, whether it was Ryan Kelly, whether it was Bernard Ryman, whether it was it's been
Braden Smith
for the last 4 weeks, I think. That to me, you told me that back in July, that they were going to have the starting 5 together for week 1, and that's it. Then I would have said this team's New England 2-7. That there's no way that they would be 4. If you had thrown in that Richardson was hurt, I might have said 0-9. But here they are at 4-5. And all the things that happened that you just mentioned, but the offensive line alone is a massive issue. Something we'd normally would have been the headline because it would have been so obvious how bad it was hurting this team. So a credit to those 5 guys up front. Well, there's 7 guys up front that have come in and played and made it happen. Credit to Tony Sperano Jr. We're going to get to MVPs later, but low key, maybe he's the offensive MVP for this team this year.
I like that. Yeah, it doesn't have to just be a player. Give it to a coach without a doubt. And you're right. Like even to Quentin Nelson, like the guy's been banged up. He's barely practicing this season. And he's still going out there playing at a high level. You're 100% right. Like you look at what, like if we just said on paper before the season, right? All the Colts, Richardson injuries, offensive line injuries. You would have definitely expected like this team to look like the Panthers did on Sunday. I know the Colts offense looked a lot like their offense did. I get it. But for the most part of the season, it hasn't looked like that. And so this team deserves a lot of credit. And like I said, 4-5 for a year that I didn't really know, honestly, what to expect. I think we both took the under. I think it was 5.5. Or I think one of us had 4, one of us had 5 wins. I think you're right, 6.5. I think we both took the under on that. We weren't expecting a lot. And so far, halfway through to match the win total from last year and should, on paper, we'll give you our picks on Thursday, but should surpass that on Sunday in Germany. I think you have all the reason right now to be encouraged with this team going forward. I think so far, like I said, it's even though their record's under 500, it's a real reason to have a positive outlook so far, looking back on the first 9 games of the season. All right, let's dig a little bit deeper here, George. Let's break down the offensive grades so far. If I had to give the offense a grade, I would honestly mimic it right now with what I did for the overall team. I'd give it an A-. This is a top 10 offense with, we just outlined, offensive line injuries, your rookie quarterback starting and finishing 1 game for this season, your best offensive player, Jonathan Taylor, missing the first 4 games as well. the fact that we're still sitting here talking about a team with Gardner Minshew and Zach Moss being the two primary contributors, being a top 10 offense is a credit to Shane Steichen, credit to the guys on the offense for contributing, even the receivers as well. Again, I would say a little bit disappointing, but still make it to plays when they have to. Like, there's obviously room for growth, right? Like, this is anywhere but a perfect offense. And there's areas that all three phases, pass game, run game, offensive line, can improve upon. I know the offensive line's not a phase, but just bear with me here. And it's still, with that said, I think there's a lot of reason, again, to be impressed with what we've seen. And there's also still room for growth, which is exciting.
In fairness, if Quentin Nelson says the offensive line's a phase, it's a phase. I just, whatever he says goes. But I have to agree. I would probably give them an A, honestly. Everything that you've seen them go through, they're the only team in the league with at least 20 points in every game this season. Now, granted, defense got them there.
Thank you, Kenny Moore.
Sunday. But the offense had 13 on that first pick, so you never know. Things play out a little bit differently. Shane kind of admitted yesterday that he did get more conservative in the second half because you had the lead, and there really wasn't. He didn't say this, but I'll go ahead and say it for him. There wasn't much of a threat coming from Carolina's offense, so you were all that. There wasn't a whole lot of reason to get out there and get aggressive and try to throw deep and make things happen. So I think I give them an A. Where they're at, like you said, everything they've been through, they're a top 10 offense, which is unbelievable. I mean, I really don't know how that's happened. We'll see. They can continue that in the second half of the year. I think it's going to be a big challenge because I think you're seeing defenses really adjust to what they do. But this is where I think you've got a lot of reason to be encouraged by Shane Steichen, because I think you feel like he's going to make some adjustments too. And I do wonder, and this week will be a test for this, Frank Reich knows that scheme pretty well. It's not exactly his scheme, but it's in his family of offense. Nick Sirianni obviously had a lot of the flavor of what the Colts are running right now. I'm sure Shane's brought in some of his own stuff, but this is still in the family tree. So how much did that play into the fact that Carolina's defense played a lot better than it has all year long, and that the Colts offense looked the worst that it's looked all year? I don't know. It's one of those things that we might get a better idea of, on Sunday in Germany and see how they bounce back. But I do think that is a factor. Was it 3 points in the game? Was it 10? I don't know what number you put on it. But fact of the matter is, you had a head coach on the other side. And if you look at Frank's record when he was here against the guys, either he had coached against them, quarterbacks who played for him before, or, guys who had coached with him, he had a really good record of going out and shutting down those offenses. We'll see how much that played in today.
I think you're right. And that is a good point to make in terms of like the defense playing over their skis, Carolina's defense, that is. And I think that's a good point. The litmus test will be on Sunday to see kind of will these offense struggles continue? Is the book out on the Colts, or was this, again, like I said, more familiarity helping out Carolina and they kind of knew what to expect? We've been talking a lot about that, huh? Teams knowing what to expect. Maybe not in the NFL game, but in the college game with the University of Michigan. So, but you're right. That's I think definitely something to keep an eye on for Sunday and something going forward here to see how this Colts offense does adjust. On a negative side, if we go on the other side of the ball to the defense, what grade would you, through 9 games, what grade would you give him, George?
I mean, it's been ugly over there most of the time. Got to give him some credit for that Baltimore game. That looks better and better. Every week that passes, that looks better and better. And they got to get credit for winning the game on Sunday. I mean, that was Kenny Moore, just delivering a victory in Carolina there for the Colts. But on the whole, I mean, as much credit as you got to give them for that, what they did against New Orleans, not good at all. Even with as bad as the offense was at times, turning the ball over and giving them short fields, to let PJ Walker go on a game-winning drive the way they did against Cleveland, there's been a lot of bad out there. Like we talked about, a lot of young guys learning on the job, a lot of issues with that team in terms of injuries, in terms of suspensions, things that have taken guys off the field. I mean, Sunday they didn't have Zaire Franklin, and they were able to step in there and have one of their better performances of the year. I'm gonna be charitable, and I'm gonna go C minus. I feel like that's high. I really do. But I feel like the Baltimore grade, like 50% of that C minus is the Baltimore game, which is just incredible. They were able to pull that off.
I am in a similar boat. I would go C. Like, it's been bad, but I think there's also, like you said, the offense in that Cleveland game gave them no help whatsoever. So the 39 points is not pretty. But again, when you have a defensive touchdown, when you have a blocked field goal, when you have a lot of short field you have to defend, you're right. It's PJ Walker and it's a backup running back. You got to be able to get some stops. But the offense definitely did not help them out whatsoever in putting them in some precarious situations. The Saints game is just bad. Saints game was easily, I think, their worst game of the year. Jacksonville had their way with them for most of the game in Jacksonville for definitely the first half of that week 1 game. But I think the reason why I'm not going to go lower than a C is, again, it is grading on a curve where the secondary has not been good, but you are seeing some encouraging signs where it's not just been all bad. It's not just been like, wow, basically throw them all out here and we're going to start fresh in 2024. You've seen some reasons to believe that a lot of the guys playing right now will be back, or at least should be back next year. The linebackers and the depth that we've seen at linebacker, I think, has been encouraging to where even with Shaq Leonard not getting back to 100%, and even we just saw in Carolina where your leading tackler and Zaire Franklin is out, well, we've seen EJ Speed come in and play very well and develop nicely this year. We see even, guys like Alubi come in, play solid, again, contribute. We've seen guys on the defensive line as well with Grover Stewart out, with Kwity Payout, step in and make some contributions. It's not been pretty. I think Gus Bradley definitely deserves some blame as well for some of the decisions he's made in terms of how to call a defense. But for how bad it's been, I do think there are some bright spots to hold on to, and I don't think all of their struggles have been on them directly. I think, again, the offense and specifically Gardner Minshew have not helped them out as much as they should. So it's been ugly. It's been frustrating. It's definitely right now the biggest weakness of this team. I would say C to kind of grade it on a curve in terms of who's out there, who's playing, and some situations that they've been getting burned in. Is it really all their fault? It's been bad, but I don't think it's been as bad as maybe the numbers just on paper would say.
No, I think make that case, and it's another thing to really keep an eye on here in the second half of the season. Can some of these young guys, like we talked about during the college years, at some point you're not freshmen anymore. Get far enough into the season, you've got enough experience, you're no longer freshmen, and so some of these younger guys at some point they're not a rookie anymore. So we'll see how this works out. Even guys that weren't rookies to start the year but are playing in bigger roles, than they ever have before. Like, you're gonna start getting into a point now where, okay, this is who you are now. This is your job moving forward. It'll be interesting to see, how they're able to sort of build on what they did Sunday. If nothing else, just try to can it get back to being a good run stopping defense. Getting Grover back will help a lot with that. Can the secondary continue to grow? Can Darrell Baker continue to put together good games like he did on Sunday, and bounce back? For him, like these are things I think you want to keep watching. Can Julian Blackmon continue to play at an extremely high level?
Yes.
Can Kenny Moore continue to play at a really high level? Like, I think, they probably need to see a little more from Rodney Thomas. I think there's a little slippage there, that they would like to correct. In general, I think the defense needs to clean some things up. That's what they've been saying all year long, that a lot of this is just being in the wrong gap, doing the wrong assignment, and miscommunication here, things like that, that I think, can you clean some of that up in the second half of the year? And it's another reason to be interested and to, pay close attention to what this team's doing.
Absolutely. And like I said, the changes are, I don't say minimal, but like they're fixable. Like, it's a lot of the issues where it's definitely not like you have to overhaul everything. It's part of it learning, part of it getting guys healthier, and part of it, just like I said, improving and just making sure you're playing sound football. All things that are frustrating to watch now at times, that come up sometimes in the worst moments, but also things that with the guys on the roster absolutely are correctable. And going forward, you can expect things to improve, which I think, again, for this season especially, that's what you want. That's what you're looking for. So overall wise, you're saying, George, this year's been a B+. I'll go A-. Offense for you so far halfway through is an A. I'll go A-. C- for you, the defense, I'll go C. How about offensive and defensive MVP, George? If I had to say right now through 9 games, you have the trophy in your hand. Use this water bottle. The offensive MVP, according to George Bremer, goes to
Is that the ice finally melted from Jacksonville, by the way? Did it finally,
a
did it
month
finally
too
happen?
late.
It's all set. Yeah, throwback to previous pods. You can go back to the Jacksonville preview pod to see what the ice means. But the
I'm getting ready for 2024. I'll add one more ice cube.
right. Right. Oh man. Offensive MVP. I'm tempted to go with the entire offensive line.
Go for it.
But
Give
I
it
think
to
I'm
a
gonna go
unit.
with Zach Moss.
Okay.
I think I'm gonna go with Zach Moss just because, like you said, broken forearm. Came into last week as a second leading rusher in the NFL. Yeah, he's taking more and more of a secondary role to Jonathan Taylor now moving forward. But what he did, for the first half of the season, given the situation he was in, given the situation the Colts were in, not knowing when John Taylor was going to come back for the first month, him trying to come back from a broken arm, that to me is MVP stuff. Going out there and really being the focal point of the offense at times, carrying this team through the first month of the year. I think Zach Moss deserves offensive MVP. Defensive MVP, because Grover Stewart's suspended. No, even without that, I think it's gonna be Buckner. I mean, I think just the things that he affects on a down-to-down basis. Carolina was a perfect example of him just destroying play after play. Even when he doesn't get the sack, get the quarterback backpedaling and throwing the ball somewhere he doesn't want to throw it. I think if you give this team 11 DeForest Buckners, then the defense will get an A+. So I'm going to go MVP on offense, Zach Moss; on defense, DeForest Buckner.
You won't do it. I will. Offensive MVP, I'm going to go Tony Sparano Jr. Like that was outside of Shane Steichen, the most important hire this team made this season was to get an offensive line that was very highly paid to get them back playing like it. And we absolutely questioned Chris Ballard this offseason when he made basically the statement of, hey, it's not the talent we have with these 5 guys playing, it's a coaching. And we saw how they played last year, and that's absolutely a fair question to say, are you sure about that? Like, are we really sure it's just the coaching? And through 9 games, I think the coaching absolutely has been the biggest problem last year. And now you see the big change over this year, where even with injuries, even with the shuffling of this offensive line, they still have held their own for the most part, played well. You have Blake Freeland right now stepping in. Has he been great? No. He's also a rookie guy that you were not expecting with a day 3 pick to be contributing whatsoever, and contributing now for the last month, and still is doing a good enough job where it's not a complete turnstile at right tackle. But again, Ryan Kelly has really stepped up and had a big year after a down 2022 season. Quentin Nelson is, again, getting back into form. Bernard Ryman, again, another question where we thought, what are you doing basically giving Bernard Ryman the job at left tackle? Why is there no competition being brought in to at least push him this year for the job? And he, again, has stepped in and continues to get better and better each week. Will Fries has been very solid as well at right guard. This has been a unit where, again, absolutely credit to Tony Sparano Jr. Big risk by Chris Ballard, but he absolutely, I think, nailed it in identifying the talent is here. We just got to get the right coaching for these guys. And so far, this offensive line has allowed Zach Moss to have holes and have constantly created a push. Like I said, that Baltimore game, you could argue they won that game on their own just with the ability to consistently run the ball and get, win the line of scrimmage to give Gardner Minshew some time. And also, again, allow the run game to continue where you can win basically a game that was a grinded out in the rain. Both teams want to just run the ball. Okay, fine. We'll just out tough you. I think they did against right now one of the best teams in the AFC. They have been a revelation, and they have been a big reason why this team is 4-5. And again, their offense is in the top 10.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree.
And defensive MVP, Buckner, I think, is a tremendous choice. Probably if I had a first round pick, first choice, I would go that. But to be different and give you another name and put some light on another guy, I'll go Zaire Franklin. Zaire Franklin's been a tackling machine, came in last year, was able to do that tremendously. And again, filling it for Shaq Leonard did a great job. And again, this year, not that you wonder, was it a flash in the pan, but he has stepped in and just continued to be a tackling machine. Leads the NFL 102 tackles on the season. That's with missing last week too. Just shows you how involved he's been. Been the leader of this defense, and he's just been someone that has really kind of stepped up and allowed Shaq Leonard to take his time, right? There's been questions and concerns of, oh, Shaq's not Shaq yet, and he's made no splash plays. Oh my goodness. But I think Zaire Franklin is a reason why there's no reason to panic just yet, because he is kind of filled in and is holding down the fort while Shaq still kind of works through and tries to get back to his maniac form. You don't feel like now there's extra pressure because Zaire Franklin, at least in the interim, he's cleaning up, tackling anyone in this area, in his zip code right now. I mean, it's unbelievable. This guy, anyone he's near, just vacuums him up, tackles him down. He's been tremendous. So I'll give Zaire Franklin right now the defensive MVP, but him and Buckner have been by far the two most impactful players, two most consistent players for this defense.
And their leadership has been huge too. I mean, their ability to, I know Buckner kind of rallied the troops a little bit during the week. Just basically saying defense has just got to get better. It's on us, and we've got to get better. And I think Zaire Franklin has been that guy, since he came to this team. I mean, he's a special teams captain pretty much from day one, and he's just kind of taken that leadership right over to the defensive side. His arc, as you're naming him the MVP, to me, it's a different position. It's a different player, but his arc's a little bit similar. It took a longer time to Robert Mathis. Mathis came in and really spent that first year as just sort of the special teams ace, and that's what he did. And then even as he started getting into the defense, it was still, is it Mathis or is it Freeney? Is Freeney making Mathis? And I think you've had similar situation there. Is it Franklin or is it Leonard? Is Leonard making Franklin? And now you've got clearly Zaire Franklin is, he's deserved everything he's gotten. He's probably the guy that these coaches will point to for decades after he's gone, wherever they're coaching, to say, hey, this is how you make the most of your opportunities. Here's a guy that came in as a 7th round pick out of Syracuse, stuck by just being an absolute beast on special teams. And when he finally got his shot on defense, one of the best defense players in the league.
Absolutely is. And he's allowed, for guys like Bobby Okereke to walk and not feel his loss. Like, he is, the more opportunity you give him, the more he rises up to the moment, which again, some guys you see in short spurts, oh, they're great. But then all of a sudden now the longer they're on the field, they get exposed or not as good. All of a sudden, wow, you give them more responsibility, they shrink. He has been a guy that every single, the more the Colts give him, the better he gets. Like I said, he's worked through it. He's built his way up. He's grinded through. And now every single opportunity he's been given, he has taken full advantage of. It's an awesome story to see his growth and development. I love the Robert Mathis comparison. That's not one I really had on my radar. Tremendous pull by you. And you see a lot of similarities between the two without a doubt. And it's been just so much fun to watch and continue to watch. Hopefully that knee injury does not keep him sidelined for too long. First, and that's another too. I mean, outside of this Carolina game, he's been available every game. So he's in the mix. He's been playing great. And he's also been available as well, which is obviously the best ability any single player can have. So we've given our grades for the team, the offense, the defense, offensive MVP, defensive MVP. Let's finish off our midseason grade, George, with a grade of the head coach. If I had to give Shane Steichen a grade so far, I give an A-. Again, some areas to improve, right? You want to give Jonathan Taylor the ball more in a close game against the Saints. You want to talk about targets for Michael Pittman Jr. in that game against the Browns when it's close. Absolutely fair. But I think for the most part, again, when you're working with a backup quarterback for 85% of the season, when you're playing without your best running back and one of your best offensive players for really the first 5 games of the season, to still have this team as a top 10 offense, and like you said before, to have this team, the only team in the NFL that has scored at least 20 points a game in every single game they played, Shane Steichen at this point has been everything and more you could have asked for. He's faced adversity. He's overcome it. And that's the thing. Like, training camp was an absolute circus. It was a joke with what Jim Irsay kind of threw on the fire, with Jonathan Taylor's agent being outspoken as well. There was a lot in Shane Steichen's first training camp just to deal with that had nothing to do with on the field, plus injuries all offseason long to a lot of the skill guys in offense. So you didn't have Anthony Richardson, practicing a lot with Jonathan Taylor or Michael Pittman Jr. or Alec Pierce. And so to work with a lot of backups in the preseason, work with now a lot of backups in the regular season, they performed. They have performed. I think, again, some areas to improve with, obviously. But I think overall, A-, I think, is absolutely a fair grade right now for Shane Steichen. How about yourself, George?
Yeah, I'll go even higher. I'll give him an A, and a
Ooh.
lot of the reasons that you were talking about. Um, First of all, the situation he walked into. I mean, it's not hard for us to remember what it was like in January, and how the feeling was around here. There were people legitimately saying this is 5 or 6 years away from being, 5 or 6 years away. Like it was a massive problem going on. You had no answer at quarterback. You had no idea really what direction you were going forward in because of the way last season ended. And he comes in and he was a huge part of identifying Anthony Richardson and deciding that this was the guy. And I think there's jury's out on that because obviously he's only played 4 games, but the upside there is tremendous. And I think you've seen it on the field. It's not just combine numbers now that you're going off of. You were able to watch him run this offense and feel really good about what he could do moving forward. Now he's got to go out and prove it. He's got to stay healthy. There's a lot of ifs there, but there is definitely from the feeling around the quarterback position now and this time last year could not be more opposite. I mean, it's completely the other end of the spectrum. And then the things that he had to face coming in. I mean, you were talking about some of the stuff that went on in training camp. One of the first things that happens before training camp, Isaiah Rodgers is suspended for gambling and he's gone. Your first year head coach and a projected starter in a thin spot of your defense is out before you even do a training camp practice. You get into training camp and you've got the Jonathan Taylor circus to deal with. And now you've had the injuries in and out with Anthony Richardson. I mean, for a first year head coach to deal with everything he's dealt with, and they're definitely improved over last year. I don't think you can argue about whether 4 and 5 should be better and whatever else that you want to argue about. They are definitely improved over where they were a year ago. And I think the biggest thing he's done is change that look going forward. As dark as things were in January, and as hard as it was to see where this franchise was going, Shane Steichen comes in, and there is a very clear path forward. There's a lot of hope, honestly, for the future. No matter how these last 7 games go, 8 games, the 17th week.
Yeah, I know. It's so annoying.
No matter how these last 8 games go, I think you're going to feel really good at the end of this season about what the Colts can do in 2024. And for a first-year head coach to come in and make that the case with everything he's dealt with, I think it's pretty remarkable.
I mean, I think it's also too that the fact that we're recording today, so Tuesday, November 7th, it's apropos because this exact date last year, Frank Reich was fired. And the win total is not that much different, right? When Frank Reich was fired after that awful New England game, Colts are 3-5-1. 4-5. Again, we're talking about basically a similar record, a similar situation in terms of standings wise, this time right now versus this time last year. But like you said, the vibes, the optimism, the hope, it is night and day. It is truly on the opposite spectrum today as we record this podcast. And you've heard it right now through the first half hour we recorded about reasons for optimism with this team versus this time last year. We're honestly we are counting down the season at that point. It was so depressing. No matter what quarterback they played, they had no juice on offense. They could not block anyone, could not hold on to the football. They were lifeless. They didn't fight whatsoever. They gave up at the first sign of adversity. And so for how bad it was literally a calendar year ago today, as we record this on November 7th, it has been the opposite. Even though the win total is basically the same, everything else is flipped on its head in a big time way. And like I said, the first person that deserves a lot of credit for that is absolutely Shane Steichen.
No, there's no question. As far as the difference in the record, it's down to a missed field goal, right? I mean, if Rodrigo makes the field goal in overtime in Houston week 1, they're 4-5. It's the same record. So Matt Gay is the difference in the record right now. It's, by the way, we didn't do this, but best free agent signing has got to be Matt Gay, right? I mean, the 50-yard field goal machine right now.
And he honorable mention for offensive MVP. He won them the game against right now. They're easily their best win of the season against the Ravens. Another 50+ yarder, 57 yarder, right, which ties a franchise record. I believe, right? It was a tie for the franchise record in Carolina. And he's money. He's absolutely money. He's been like, so yeah, definitely a free agent signing that someone on this pod may or may not have made fun of when it happened, giving the most money in NFL history to a free agent kicker. But hey, we won't live in the past. We're only living in the present. And with hindsight, say that was the greatest move Chris Ballard has ever made, without a doubt, 100% the right one. But it's just like, and also too, by the way, one thing to mention, not only, but like the records have been basically the same, right? 3 wins and 4 wins this time last year versus this team right now this year. But it's also a lot of the same situations where last year Matt Ryan was not very good. But then you all of a sudden, right, by this point, you had Sam Ehlinger starting games. And eventually we saw Nick Foles. Like, you had no quarterback stability last year. You have no quarterback stability this year. Like, you only had, well, now Gardner Minshew, I was going to say start and finish games because you had the same quarterback start and finish one game. But you had your rookie quarterback start and finish one game. That's it. And still, Shane Steichen has been able to manage that and still have a top 10 offense where last year, you know, all this quarterback influx, and they were one of the worst scoring teams in the league. So another reason why it's not just everything has gone well for the Colts and just everything that could have gone wrong last year went wrong. They've had some bad breaks this year. Jonathan Taylor didn't play for half the season, and they've had their rookie quarterback start and finish one game, and still the production has been there. It's been, oh, George, it's been a godsend, truly. This has been a fun year, even though, again, record-wise, it's about the same. It's been night and day. It's been tremendous.
You can just see so many of these young guys and you can project where they're going. And I think that's what helps. And I mean, everything in this league comes back to the quarterback. Everybody knows that. And the fact that you've got one who unfortunately is on the sideline right now, but who you can place some hopes and dreams on. I don't think that that's been the case since Andrew Luck left. You know, yeah, Philip Rivers played way better than probably anybody gave any reason to expect him to in 2020, but no one thought he was going to be here for 5 years. He was going to be the future of the franchise, obviously. And there might have been a brief moment there where there was some hope with Jacoby when they were 5-2. But it just didn't last. And I think now you've got a guy who's 21 years old, who has shown you on the field what he's capable of doing. Yeah, you got to prove it. You got to prove you can stay healthy. You got to prove you can do it week after week. But there's an actual reason for optimism, and a lot of it goes around him. But, Josh Downs, I think, has given you reason for optimism. Jalen Jones, there's some young talent on this team that I think you can feel really good about. Drew Ogletree's starting to give you reason for optimism. There's just like you said, a completely different 180 feeling around this franchise right now. And it doesn't mean that 2024 is going to be a breakout playoff year, but just the fact that you can sit here, like I said, on November 7th of all days, exactly a year after, the firing of Frank Reich and the hiring of an ESPN analyst, and you can think about next year with playoff expectations, pretty remarkable.
Oh, God, I don't know why I blocked this. I mean, I know why I blocked it out of my memory, but it's not just right. It's not just the firing of Frank Reich. It was the infamous press conference and Chris Ballard looking like, I thought, honestly, George, that's Monday night press conference when they announced Jeff Saturday as the head coach. I thought for a hot second, Chris Ballard's gonna be like, you know what? I'm out here, guys. I resign. He just looked so pissed. Looked like he wanted to be anywhere but where he was on that dais, sitting there hearing Jim Irsay spew the nonsense about the belief of Jeff Saturday. They're going to turn it around. This is the best guy for the job, blah, blah, blah. Oh, boy. That is...
Not afraid. He's not afraid.
He's not afraid. Oh, my goodness. Oh, boy. That is... Jeez. Upper quartile of the upper quartile. A lot of good lines that hopefully we never have to hear again.
But, I mean, you really think about it. And with this being the 1 year anniversary, how far this franchise has come from that day, and how much room there is and reason to believe, that they can go even further in the next year. I mean, where will we on November 7th next year? How will we be talking about this team? I think it's a really interesting thing to think about.
It is. And right now there's a reason to believe that we'll be talking about this team even better than we are right now at 4-5. You got to think, even if they don't make the playoffs next year, that they are a fringe team that is at least in the mix. And what we've seen from Anthony Richardson, as long as he could stay healthy, you have a real reason for optimism. And what's interesting too, is you look at this division, there's we could, George, if things pan out the way they seem right now, where Richardson in the short time he's been on the field has a lot of reason for us to believe, wow, this is the guy. Like, this could be, the franchise quarterback to get the Colts back into playoff and Super Bowl contention. Right now, it's fitting that we're talking about the division and the hope where the Texans and CJ Stroud just broke the rookie record for most passing yards in a game, and he leads an insane fourth quarter comeback in order to beat the Buccaneers with, 46 seconds left to lead them down for the game-winning touchdown drive. He has been better than I honestly ever thought he would be, to be honest. Trevor Lawrence is not having a great year, but the Jaguars are still 6-2, winners of 5 in a row, and right now on top of the division. And even Will Levis, in the short time he's been there, have given Titans fans hope of, hey, maybe this guy could be the future, being a high second-round pick. Like, I think two things. One, I think it underscores, and especially coming off the game we just saw against Carolina, George, I think it underscores now the importance of, if you feel good, and you showed by Anthony Richardson, now it's you got to give him as much help and as much talent as possible to make sure that we're not talking about him in the same light we're talking about Bryce Young this time next year, where there's just no help. Look, Bryce Young's not perfect, but we saw in that game, offensive line's not very good. The receivers are not a threat whatsoever. I mean, you could argue they have the worst receiving room maybe in the NFL, if not one of the bottom skill sets in terms of running back, tight end, wide receiver groups in the entire league. Frank Reich has already given up play calling duties halfway through the year. It's been a mess in Carolina. And I think for how bad Bryce Young has been, you can make excuses as well for him as to the team around him. If you're the Colts right now, when you look at the Texans and their optimism, the Jaguars and their optimism, and even the Titans a little bit with the belief in Will Levis, now going forward, you have to say, all right, especially coming off the game against Carolina, we cannot allow Anthony Richardson to be Bryce Young 2.0. And that, again, this offseason, it's figuring out and identifying talent in the draft, maybe trying to swing a trade if you can to get, maybe a T. Higgins or someone like that on this roster, like getting Richardson some bona fide talent here, because not only do you want, again, you don't want him to be Bryce Young, you have some, this division, George, could, let's say 5 years from now, be the best quarterback division in the league. And if that's the case, you need some real talent.
It's crazy to even think that, but that's true. I mean, when you look at the quarterbacks in this league right now, and when you talk about giving them some help, I mean, part of Will Levis and the optimism around him is DeAndre Hopkins. He's got D-Hop to throw the ball to, and he's taking advantage of that. And I think that's going to be a key for the Colts this offseason is continuing to build on what's here. The foundation that is already starting here. And I think it's another area where Shane's going to be really active. Interesting to see. He seems to be a very assertive guy in terms of very cleanly and clearly being able to say, this is what I need and this is what I want and how I want to get there. Irsay was really not secretive about. He's not secretive about much of anything, but he really wasn't secretive about the fact that Shane's the one that really pushed Richardson over the line, because he was able to convince Irsay that he's going to be a guy who can be a top passer in this league. It won't just be the running element. And I can see him doing similar things in free agency or in the draft next year, highlighting certain players and saying this is why. Because I think when you come into Chris Ballard's office and you're able to very plainly and objectively say, we need this particular tight end or this particular receiver, this particular lineman, because we're going to do this with him and it's going to look like this. Now all of a sudden Ballard's like, okay, I can see that. I can go with it, as opposed to just saying nebulously, we need another playmaker. You know what I mean? I don't think that's going to be Shane. I think he's going to be the guy that says, I don't just need another playmaker. I need T. Higgins, and here's why, or whatever the name is. And so I think that's going to be interesting to watch this offseason. But this division as a whole, definitely on the rise. And we were talking about that on the Saints pod, with Jeff Duncan, who was talking about, hey, look, Saints kind of thought they were going to walk over everybody, and it didn't turn out that way for them. They had tough games. They lost a couple of them. Now you look at, where these teams are moving forward, what CJ Stroud has done down there in Houston. By the way, the Texans owe an apology to Lovie Smith. And everyone was so angry with him for getting that 2-point convert. Not only did they win that game, right, they got so far the best rookie quarterback in this class. So, I think the Texans owe an apology to Lovie Smith. But CJ Stroud in what he's done, Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars being the class of the division, And like you said, Will Levis at least giving hope down there in Tennessee for the future, the same way that Anthony Richardson at least gives hope here. This is going to be a tough division to win, probably for the length of Anthony Richardson's time here. And so the Colts have got to take that into account, and they've got to act accordingly.
And then, right, it's not going to be the Peyton Manning AFC South where you wake up, on the first day of the season, okay, the division's ours. Now it's about, we're going to get the number 1 seed, or, where are we going to fall in the rest of the AFC? But you knew without a doubt that the division is a lock. And that's also, I think, a reason for optimism as we sit here a year from the Frank Reich firing of, look, I think we could truly sit here and say, if our projections are right and CJ Stroud really blossoms and continues on his trajectory, and Trevor Lawrence, again, gets to that MVP level sooner rather than later we think he can be, and even if Will Levis develops into being a franchise quarterback, with how deep and tough the AFC South could be 5 years from now, if you're the Colts, I think you have no reason to believe, oh boy, we're screwed, or like we are 4th right now in this division. If everyone else transpires, like you have a real reason, let's say 5 years from now, if things, again, that's on Shane Steichen, that's on Chris Ballard, that's on everyone right now to continue right now the growth that we've seen in 2023. But if that continues, you have no reason to think, oh, we are behind the 8 ball here. You have absolutely every reason to think, oh, we'll push Jacksonville and should push Jacksonville. We'll go into Tennessee and beat the Titans. We'll go into Houston and beat the Texans. Like, if it's like going to be like a, everyone's loading up right now for the war that's coming the next, half decade here in the AFC South, you have every reason to believe if you're the Colts, oh, we're ready. Like we have, we got the pieces we need here to compete year in and year out. And for 2023, again, with this year kind of being one of those wait and see, what do we kind of got? I think you can kind of say right now, even halfway through the year, like that's a win for the season, even with your rookie quarterback playing 1 game.
Yep. No doubt about it. And, they're 2-2 in the division. That's one of the things that we didn't talk about in grading Shane. But last year, they absolutely fell apart in the division. I think they were 1-4-1 when the season was all, said and done. 2-2 with 2 games to play. They're both road games. They're not going to be easy games. They got to go to Tennessee. One's a home game. They got to go to Tennessee. They're going to host Houston at the end of the season. Neither one of those will be easy games, though. You see in the way the Texans are playing, and I think by week 18, I'm sure they'll still be playing good football with CJ Stroud as long as they keep him healthy. And Tennessee, I think, is going to be – it's always tough when you go over to Nashville. Right. I think it's going to continue to be. But if they even go 3-3, they split those 2 games and are 3-3 in the division, that's a massive step forward from where they were a year ago. And that is – most years, that's how you make playoffs. Win your division games. That's the most important thing you can do. Doing that with a banged-up team, an injured quarterback, all the other things that are going on, again, credit to Shane Steichen, credit to this franchise for getting back on path. And what was a pretty dark time, I think, a year ago. And now here you are feeling good. It's going to be there is hope for the future for the first time in a long time. And I think that's the most important thing. But there's hope for the future for this entire division. And I think that's going to be really fun to watch play out.
No, you're right. I'm just trying to see if I can look this up fast. I don't think I can. The last time the Colts had a winning record in the division, at least 500 against the division, because they have, like I said, last year was a real struggle. I'll get it for Thursday, or as we get later into the season. But that's been right. Like they've struggled in the AFC South in recent years. And that's something where, again, if you want to be a real contender here, you got to go beat Jacksonville in Jacksonville some point soon to be a real contender. Beat Tennessee in Tennessee on a consistent basis as well here. That's now, like I said, the next phase going forward if this team's going to be a real contender. But like we just said before, the real reason why there is optimism and belief that this team sooner rather than later can absolutely do that as well. So it's going to be a fun rest of the season, a fun second half of the season. That starts in Germany, George. We'll get you obviously a full Germany Colts Pats preview on Thursday. We kind of look ahead a little bit here, George. We do know the travel schedule for this team. They are going to travel to Germany after Thursday's practice. So not taking the Dolphins plan, where the Dolphins at this point last week are already in Germany. I think they left on Monday. Basically spent a full week abroad. Colts and the Patriots as well have the same plan, where they're both going to leave Thursday afternoon. It's about a 7-hour time difference. I think Germany is, Frankfurt is 6 hours, 6-hour difference between right now the Eastern time zone and Frankfurt. And so I don't know if there's a right or a wrong way. This is only the 3rd game in Germany, so it's hard to tell if going over for a week is better, or going over as late as you can. I mean, the Chiefs left, I think, Friday or got there Friday morning. So I think maybe the same flight plan as the Colts and the Patriots. They won and got off to a hot start. The Dolphins were there all week and got off to a slow start. So I think it's still too early to tell what the right move is, but I think it's good at least that both teams are leaving at the same time. So there's really no advantage whatsoever with in terms of being there longer, being there shorter.
Yeah, no, I think that's key. You always do kind of wonder. Last week, obviously, there were people saying Miami had an advantage because the Chiefs were going to be tired. Miami was there the whole week. They got adjusted to the schedule. They were ready to go. And obviously, the Chiefs were flying in at the end of the week, and the Chiefs went out and won the game on Sunday. So I don't know, I don't know what you take from that. It'll be interesting to see. I think in the London games, it did seem like there was a definite advantage to Jacksonville on the second game, being the first team to play back-to-back there. It definitely seemed like they were fresher than Buffalo in that game, when it came to the second one. So we'll see how that plays out this week. But I think the fact the Patriots are on the same schedule nullifies it. Like, maybe it would have been better to go early, but both teams are going to be dealing with it now. So it doesn't really matter. I think what's interesting is we've seen Shane put through so many different types of tests. They've had games against teams that were supposed to blow them out. They've had games against teams they were supposed to blow out. They've played from behind. They played with the lead. Now this is another completely unique situation. Going over to Germany, trying to keep the week as normal as you can. And that's what he said about why the schedule is the way it is this week. He's trying to keep it as normal as it can be to a game week. I think he said he was part of with the Chargers. I think they went over to London. One time he was there, I want to say maybe 2017, somewhere. It's been a while. But he also talked to a bunch of other coaches who've done this and, gone through it. And he felt like the one big takeaway was keep things as normal as you can. So they've got a pretty regular week up through Thursday when they get on a plane and go over to Germany, and it's going to be a completely different atmosphere over there. You're going to play, like I said, I'm in Germany, but the London game was like a mini Super Bowl in some ways. And you go over there and you're practicing in a different facility than anywhere that you're normally at, like you would at the Super Bowl. You're a whole different site, and there's more, I guess, fanfare around that practice just because you're overseas and you're in a different spot. And then on Saturday, there was I'm sure they're going to do something similar in Germany, but there was like a Colts party, an NFL party on a downtown London street. And Jim Irsay got up and spoke on the stage, and some of the other people connected with the team got up there and talked. And you just had, I don't know, probably 10, 20,000 fans, the English fans out there, just clamoring to see American football. One thing I remember really well, for whatever reason, everybody had Odell Beckham Jr. jerseys on. He was huge over there in England. It's been a while. It was about 7 years. But for whatever reason, the Giants weren't playing, but it was definitely a pro Odell crowd. But now, you're going to have the same things with the German fans. You're going to have this sort of, festivities around the game that you don't get on a normal game. And how will the players react to that? How will a young team deal with that? It'll be interesting to see how that all plays out.
It's going to be a weird atmosphere in the sense that you're going to have a lot of neutral fans. I would assume because of the Patriots dynasty, like internationally, you're going to have a lot of Patriots fans in Germany just because of how great they've been. So I'd assume that you'll see a pro Patriots crowd, but it's still a lot of just German fans, NFL fans that want to be in the building. You're watching the Chiefs Dolphins game, a lot of Chiefs fans there, but also too, you saw a lot of just random jerseys. So just kind of like the London game, one of those where, yeah, you could have the home team, in this case, New England, have more fans, but it's still one of those, everyone's happy to be there. So it's more just excitement with every big play versus just a hostile crowd that you normally see if you go to Foxborough or any other home team here in the States. It's a really good test to see this team's focus as well. And that, I think, is reflective of the head coach. If you can get these guys dialed in and have it truly be another normal game, I think that just shows you the voice that Shane Steichen has and the leadership he has, where guys are truly buying in. Right now, it's evident on the field. And that's another one of these tests that, like I said, it seems like Shane should pass. But it's going to be one that's, again, another obstacle. I do think a fast start here, we'll get to this a little bit more Thursday. I think a fast start in this game is imperative versus any other game. Not that you got, like, the Patriots are not very good, but still, like, if you can get out to an early lead here, in what is a weird game, rely on the run game, rely on your defense. Truly, it's crazy to say, but with how the Patriots, are an offense, I don't think you got to worry too much, kind of like the Carolina Panthers. Even if your defense has been leaky this year, not a lot of threats on that New England offense you got to really worry about here. Get an early lead, sit on the ball, and cruise to victory and cruise into the bye week.
Yeah, it's going to be another game. Limit the mistakes. Take advantage of what New England does offer to you, and don't let them get in your head. Don't play mind games. Don't try to do more than is necessary for the moment. I think that's going to be really key for them. I think there's a lot of reasons that's going to be hard to do. I mean, being over there in Germany, I'm sure the spotlight's going to feel bigger. It's the one time, you mentioned this, on the postgame pod, the one time all year that they're on national TV, that they are the only game on in their time slot. So there's going to be some pressure. I think there's going to be a different atmosphere. It's going to look a lot different than it has, and it'll be really fun to see how these guys respond.
It's definitely different than blending into like one of the 8 games at 1:00. Definitely a little different, like I said, attention wise for sure. And that could be good with praise if they look good, or scrutiny if they're struggling here. And this offense and defense are both scuffling and allowing the Patriots to kind of look like the old Patriots. Could be a long flight home. That's for sure. I guess it won't be the case, but I was gonna say, if they win, I wonder if you spend the night in Germany, party it up, go to like, I don't know, a club, and hear some, tech music, some house music, and just party it up for one night and live the German life. Because I doubt they're going to be seeing many of the sites. I don't know. I mean, you're going over there Friday. I doubt you have any time to look around and see what Frankfurt's all about.
No, it's a really condensed, pretty tight schedule. Even with us, I mean, I remember going over there to London, and even from the media standpoint, we had 3 hours on Saturday to kind of go and tour. We jumped on one of those double-decker red buses.
Jeez.
And it was literally like, jump out, hey, look, there's Big Ben, and jump back in and go to, what I mean? So it was, but yeah, I mean, it was interesting to say the least. And I'm sure that it was the same schedule. We got over there, flew over Thursday night, got there, Friday with practice. They had dinner at the Palace. Jim Irsay had dinner at the Palace on Friday night, which was insane.
Wow.
And then Saturday was that like downtown party. And as soon as that was done, because the time difference was so crazy, we were able to like go and run and do things and then come back. And, it was just a really weird, totally different than the other thing I remember, our flight out was like, we had to be at the airport at like 3 a.m. or something, but we're at the train station and it's 2-ish, might have been 3 then, to go to the airport, and the Sunday night game had just ended. So I'm like on my phone, they're talking about the end of the Sunday night game, and you're like, wait a minute, oh yeah, it's still Sunday in the States. Like, this is just, it was a very weird, surreal kind of experience, and I'm sure Germany won't be any different in that regard.
That is funny. Just like, oh, everyone's probably sleeping. It's like, oh, geez, everyone's wide awake, buzzing. What a great ending to this Sunday Night Football. Yeah, 6-hour time difference. At least in Germany, I think it's what, 5 in London, I believe. That'll do it. That'll do it for you. Jeez.
Very
weird. Any pretzels? Maybe some German pretzels to celebrate on the plane ride home, at least, hopefully. So you gotta get, if you're a German, you gotta get something here.
There'll definitely be something. And I'm sure with it being the Patriots too, Irsay will be in a celebratory mood if they get the win. So I'm sure he will find a way, to make that happen. But yeah, the players were talking about that yesterday. The two that were on the conference call, that like, it's not a time for sightseeing. They're not going to get a chance to go over and like, if I think Kylan Grant said, if there's something on the bus on the way to practice, or from the airport to the hotel or wherever, if they just happen to pass something, then there will be. I'm sure someone will point it out. Back then, Andrew Luck was sort of the tour guide. That's what Ryan Kelly was saying. They would be on the bus, and Luck's like pointing out, giving them history lessons on this is, the 18th century, because Andrew being Andrew. But I don't know who on this team would do that. Might be Granson, honestly.
That's, maybe we have to have our eyes set out for that. Maybe Andrew Luck will make a, celeb appearance this week.
Yeah, somebody gave him schnitzel during randomly during the London press conference, the very first one. They're in like this golf course somewhere out there, and there was a German reporter there, and like gave him schnitzel up there on the podium, which was So he's got some German experience already. Bernard Ryman's got to be the tour guide, right? I mean,
Oh, you're right.
Austria neighbor, he's right next door.
He's got to be pointing now. You're right. He has to know. You assume.
And Marcel Dabo, who's on the practice squad, the German corner, who's got to get called up for this game, right? He's got to get the free practice squad transfer for this one, right?
You have to.
He's inactive on Sunday.
Just to see him on have his family see him on the sideline. Maybe try to pull the crowd that's neutral to your side. Look, we got one of your guys here. Cheer him on. Start cheering for the guys in the white on Sunday. Whatever it takes to try to get that crowd on your side. But yeah, it's going to be a business trip, George. Get that tie nice and tight. All right. We're not going on vacation, not going on sightseeing. We are there to kick ass and chew bubblegum. And guess what, George? I'm all out of bubblegum.
That's exactly pretty much what Kylan Granson said yesterday. Business trip. You got to go over there and take care of business. And they need a win. We talked about it before. This is a very winnable game. They have got to get a win. They got to get to 500 going into the bye week. So, I think unfortunately for them, there won't be a lot of time to take in the sights. They may get to test out a new field. We'll see about that. Apparently, there's a hybrid field over there in Frankfurt. The soccer team put in. Don't know a lot about it, but it's like 95% natural grass. And then there's some synthetic fibers that are apparently like tying things together so that it's a little bit more stability. It's supposed to like not have those craters come out of the field that you see sometimes. So
Wow.
It seemed like the field for the Dolphins and the Chiefs was good. It'll be the same field. So we'll see how it goes on Sunday, but that's, something to watch as well.
It looked like from that game, they put extra green paint on the grass because those jerseys were dirty. I love that, by the way. I love some good grass stains, which, again, with so many teams having turf, you rarely see. Those white jerseys for the Colts, they will be dirty. And you know what? That's a great sight. That is football, George. It's some nice green streaks. That is football.
That's what you want on Sunday, right? Is it see that white 28 jersey with plenty of green streaks on it because he's gotten his workload and he's, that's what we want to see. Number 28 with at least 28 carries on Sunday.
Yes. And hopefully some blue. I'm assuming that if the Patriots end zones will be colored blue, hopefully some blue paint too. Some navy blue paint, meaning he's diving in the end zone multiple times. Let's go. Let's go.
You won't get that analysis anywhere else. The paint stains on the jersey. That's only here on the Blue Horseshoe Pod.
That's right. And that is why, if you haven't, you got to subscribe to the Blue Horseshoe Pod, wherever you get your podcasts, Blue Horseshoe Pod, and on YouTube, Blue Horseshoe Podcast, where you can find us. And that is the exclusive home of every single post-game pod we do right after the game. So it's going to be early, right? Early on Sunday. Get your brunch ready. Get the eggs, get the bacon, get the bagels ready. Get your coffee ready as well. And we'll be live after that game. Hopefully a Colts win, kind of breaking it all down only on YouTube. So if you're listening to us on audio, number one, thank you. That's all. We love that. Tremendous. However you consume our content, we are thankful. But if you want to join in and give your thoughts on this Colts Patriots game and every post game going forward here, Blue Horseshoe Podcast is the way to do it. Subscribe to make sure you are always in tune and join us after the game. But before that, George, we got a game to preview here. So we will do so on Thursday as well. We won't give anything away. We're going to work on a different guest to help preview this game. So we have nothing locked down yet. I don't want to give away any names or any secrets, but hopefully this should be a little bit of a different preview pod here for Colts Patriots. So make sure you stay tuned to that. That will drop Thursday afternoon. So again, subscribe, download if you haven't before. Now is the time to do so. Should be a very fun and interesting week as we get set for not only Colts Patriots in Germany, but also get set for the last game before the bye week here as well. So have a great rest of your week. We'll talk to you on Thursday right here on the Blue Horseshoe Podcast.